Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. The floor of the arena split down the middle, and something underneath started to breathe. Zank 14 felt it first, through the soles of his boots, before he understood what it meant. A low, rolling pressure. Not sound yet. Just weight, gathering somewhere below the plating like a held breath about to let go. He looked down at his own plasma cannon, then at the human standing empty-handed across from him, and for the first time in 4 years of combat theory, he felt something he didn't have a word for. 3 seconds earlier, none of them had known to be afraid. It had started that morning when Professor Krathex clicked his mandibles at the newest name on his roster and decided the galaxy needed reminding that humans were a joke. Maya Foster hadn't looked up from her tablet. Quaint, she'd repeated, testing the word like she was deciding whether it deserved a response. That's what you've got. I was told your species had teeth. Vex 9, watching from 3 rows back, felt the whole room go still in the particular way it did right before Krathex made an example of someone. Instead, Krathex smiled with all 6 of his eyes at once. The mammal has jokes. He began to pace, each footstep a small percussion of menace. Tell me, Miss Foster, what do you actually know about survival? I know that people who talk about it are usually about to demonstrate they don't. She hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. And the whole time, Vex 9 noticed her hand drifting toward the bag under her desk, toward a low, patient rumble that had been building there since she walked in. Krathex called it a practical exercise. Live ammunition. Real consequences. 3 against 1, Zank 14, all muscle and bad math. Kix 2, whose species communicated primarily in threats and acid. And Vorth, a Skaxian built like a grudge with legs. Maya sighed like she'd been asked to do dishes and walked into the arena unarmed, murmuring something about how this would go sideways in ways their nightmares hadn't budgeted for. Casualty coverage doesn't extend to humans, Krathex announced pleasantly. Do try to leave enough of yourself behind to be catalogued. The shield hummed on. Combat began. And that's when the floor split, and the rumble that had been growing under a desk 2 rows back finally arrived where it had been heading all along. It didn't walk into the arena. It simply became more present than the arena was equipped to contain, a darkness with a shape that kept revising itself the longer anyone looked at it. 3 times Maya's height, teeth arranged like an argument nobody was going to win. Zank 14 cannon discharged on reflex and did nothing but warm the air. Everyone, the thing said, in a voice that sounded like continents settling, you may call me Rex. Technically, I am a pet. The word undersells the arrangement. He's a little cranky, Maya added, scratching something that might have been a jaw. Hasn't eaten in 3 hours. Krathex's voice climbed 4 octaves. You brought a predator into my classroom. Predator implies necessity. Maya looked genuinely wounded on Rex's behalf. Rex doesn't hunt to survive. Rex hunts because it's fun. There's a meaningful distinction. Vorth had already flattened himself against the far wall, all 4 eyes fixed on the thing that had, without appearing to move, arrived directly in front of him. There will be consequences, he managed. Rules, regulations. Rex lowered his head until the glow of his eyes was level with Vorth's. Rules, he repeated, savoring the word like something rare. Do you know what happened to the last people who threatened my human? A pause, generous and unhurried. I'm still finishing them. The screaming stopped last week. The pleading has been more resilient. Security arrived to find a fully depressurized force field, 3 cadets in various stages of catatonia, and a professor sending increasingly desperate messages to administration. Rex, asked politely by Maya to stand down, did mostly. He informed the room, with what might have been regret, that terror worked better as a slow-release toxin than a single dose, and that he'd be watching from the spaces between things from now on. Then he thinned at the edges and was gone, muttering something about paperwork and an incident in another galaxy that he still maintained had been an accident. Maya picked up her bag. I have advanced xenobiology next period, she told the room, stepping over Zank 14's unconscious body. Presentation on Earth's fauna should be educational. By the time she reached Dr. Yulksprime's lab, the story had outrun her, a girl and a monster that ate through insurance clauses, retold 6 times before lunch until it barely resembled itself. Grix 8, a young Malarian in the front row, had heard enough to be nervous and not enough to leave. "Is it true," he asked, as Maya set 4 containment units on the table, "that your creature lives in more than one dimension?" "Rex is having a nap," Maya said. "He worked hard today. We're keeping things conventional. Earth animals, standard biodiversity." The class exhaled. They shouldn't have. She started small, a spider barely the size of her thumb, glossy and almost sweet-looking. "Sydney Funnelweb," she said. "Charlie. 15 minutes is all his venom needs for a full-grown human, enough in him for maybe 400 Malarians, give or take." Grix 8 went the color of old parchment. Next came a snake whose scales seemed to be arguing with the light, and a spider the size of a dinner plate that reared onto its back legs with a sound like tearing paper, and a small black cat that groomed itself with the patience of something that had never once been afraid of anything in its life. "Fluffy kills something new every night," Maya said, almost fondly. "Not for food. She's just very good at it and enjoys staying in practice." By the time she got to the bird, small, unremarkable, brown, half the class had backed themselves against the walls. "This is Peep," Maya said, setting up a branch bristling with thorns. "A shrike. She collects prey while it's still alive, impales it, and comes back later. Some scientists think she likes the sound." Peep took a strip of synthetic meat from Maya's fingers and pinned it with the precision of a surgeon closing an incision. Dr. Yulksprime's tentacles had gone rigid as cable. That's psychopathic behavior." "We call it efficient," Maya said, and let the word hang there a moment before she went on. "And everything I've shown you so far is the gentle end of things." She set the last container down without opening it. "I left the sharks at home, the ants that march in armies, the octopus with the blue rings, the birds with knives for legs." She let the class do the arithmetic themselves before she finished. "And I left the humans." "Humans aren't dangerous," Grix 8 said, in the voice of someone hoping to be told he was right. Maya looked at him the way you'd look at someone who just leaned back over a railing without checking what was under it. "We're the one species back home the other apex predators actually go out of their way to steer clear of," she said, and the room went so quiet the ventilation system sounded like weather. "We keep the deadliest things alive in our houses because we've decided they're charming. We fight wars over ideas nobody can hold in their hands. And of every species on our planet, we're supposed to be the reasonable ones, the ones who show up first with open hands instead of open jaws." She hooked the last container's strap over her shoulder, unhurried, letting the silence do more work than she needed to. "So be grateful nobodies ever let the unreasonable ones leave the atmosphere." Nobody spoke. Dr. Yulks, Prime's tentacles had curled in on themselves entirely, and Grix 8 had gone still in the specific way prey goes still. Trix 4 had climbed fully onto her chair without seeming to notice she'd done it. For a long moment, the only motion in the lab was Peep, tilting her small head to study the room the way she might study a larder she hadn't finished filling yet. Maya slung her bag over one shoulder, Fluffy falling into step beside her without being told, Peep settling onto her collarbone like she'd been perched there her whole life. At the door she stopped, half-turned, and let the moment stretch one beat longer than it needed to. "For what it's worth," she said, "Rex takes bad reviews of my classwork personally. Just something to keep in mind before anyone writes up a complaint." The temperature in the room dropped by degrees nobody could measure. Somewhere down a corridor that had no business carrying sound that far, something low and satisfied exhaled, and the lab's lights dimmed half a shade before settling back to normal. Peep, riding Maya's shoulder toward the door, opened one wing halfway, not quite a flourish, not quite a threat, and folded it neatly closed again as the door slid shut behind them both.